a cohesive team. I thought that was a unicorn, a bit of an illusion.
Confusion is ugly, undermines teamwork and cohesion and kindness by its nature.
My first kick of the cat, if that's the phrase,
kick of the cat.
Was
yeah, I hope you don't
can.
kick the cat. Don't kick the cat. We're animal lovers.
Welcome to the Serious Playfulness podcast, where we explore the work of building healthy, mission-driven organizations that don't suck the life out of you. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Stephanie. And if you secretly dream of a workplace that you actually want to go to, then you're in the right place. Let's get to work.
Why good employees leave, or by that matter, good volunteers. In this podcast, we want to talk about common reasons why you're losing talent and what would lead people that you probably don't want to lose, maybe can't afford to lose, to leave. We've identified a few common reasons that we'll unpack. One is for very relational people, a lot of isolation, a lack of teamwork, a lack of meaningful human connection, including with perhaps clients and prospects. Also, poor behavior that goes uncorrected among colleagues. In other words, drama and toxicity is allowed to continue, and good people don't see it being addressed. And they see other places where it is addressed, and they want to be there. Another would be no clarity around goals and expectations, and also compensation issues sometimes if people are grossly underpaid. We can talk briefly about that. And lastly, measuring the wrong things or not measuring things at all.
Yeah.
I'll start off with a conversation I had with someone recently who, it was the situation of there were some toxic attitudes in an organization, and the leaders have to decide, are they going to address that or just sort of let it ride? And they're expecting some of the people that are causing this to leave naturally, which is helpful, but not right away. So they have to negotiate. Do I address it now? Do I just let it go? And that's an interesting scenario. They're also trying to manage the effect of that attitude among the pool of people. Mm-hmm. And my general thought is you should address it directly. And even if they're leaving, make them realize that the damage they're doing is really real, because the whole adage, right, of one bad apple spoils the whole. So that's one reason people leave, is if you're a leader and you're concerned about this, make sure you're addressing bad behavior, because it's definitely going to spread. And the fact that you either address it or not, people will notice, and there are effects of that.
I want to just jump on that quickly and explore addressing it publicly across the team and organization, and privately one-on-one with the person. And I think the default, and even what was taught for a long time in a lot of management skills, is it's done one-to-one. And I think you and I would say that's necessary and good under some circumstances. And we need to also address it as a whole, so that those who are affected by it and watching and wondering, they might know that calendar meeting was booked and, boss talked to employee, and we hope that's what they were talking about. Or we might even hear rumors that indeed was the topic. But it is very important for everyone else across the organization to hear and experience that real-time feedback where someone is held accountable for behavior that is not permitted in a culture. And so over to you. Do you want to touch base on that? This idea that, I talked to them once or I talked to them twice, that's sufficient, which I think most people would think, I've done it. I held them accountable.
Yeah, a couple things there. One is that, especially with long-seated habits in behavior, which are generally tied to character, which doesn't change easily or quickly. We know habits form slowly with repetition, and usually with a lot of feedback. In other words, not one or two times. Mm-hmm. We know this from life. If you want to change something, it often takes someone else bringing it up often. I'll come to the public thing in a second, but just about the nature of the repetition piece, that's important to stress. And an example is my teenagers, as many teenagers in our world these days are filling their sentences with the filler word like a lot. You've heard this, Stephanie, you're around teenagers too. And I correct them, but it doesn't penetrate the habit very easily. So we were having a discussion the other night about how I can bring it to their attention that's not super annoying, because I'll interrupt them and they get annoyed, which I can kind of understand. It's annoying. And yet the saying of the like is more annoying. You don't sound good. So I've started a little hand gesture, not trying to mean loser, but a little L, to just more gently, but more frequently alert them to this in the hopes that it will penetrate their self-awareness, and then that will lead them to working on and being able to see it and change it. So that's point one, is number of times. Now the public-private thing, it's delicate, isn't it? Because I think it partly depends on the collective trust of the group of people in which you're doing this. I think theoretically it would be ideal if you're able to, with honoring the person and respecting the person, treat it like a team issue. Hey, we are concerned about this behavior because it's affecting the team like this, and have the team and the person be able to absorb that and have it be a gift as it's intended. When you're dealing with people who are really wounded and insecure, and that can be tricky. So ideally, yes, collectively, but sometimes I don't know if it's possible. Also, especially if it's going to potentially lead to a critical situation where that person has to leave, chooses to leave, or gets sent off, if you will. It's tricky. So I think it kind of has to depend on the situation. But the point of, yes, one thing that's super frustrating but understandable is, let's say someone got fired because of issue X, Y, or Z. With HR considerations and the legal considerations often indicate you can't tell the other people why. And that's so hard, because sometimes people are mad at you because maybe they like that person, and you can't actually tell them, because if you do, there's a real risk there into the organization. That's
I think that might
tricky.
it's absolutely tricky if that was the cause of the dismissal, and now there's HR parameters around the communication of that, which would emphasize again the need for early addressing of these issues. And again, ideally, if the culture can bear it, if it's healthy enough, in a group setting, so that we aren't surprised why they let Joan go, because we've heard it come up at every team meeting for the last 4 months that this is, we're not there yet. We need an adjustment here. And then eventually she's let go, and we're not going to be really open about why. Like, at least we can fill in the blanks.
True.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think your point there, number one, was addressing toxic culture. And good people, the best employees, don't want to go to work every day and walk on eggshells or be in some toxic environment. They want to go to a high functioning team environment that is open and candid and healthy. That's where they want to go. And if
Yes.
they were hired, arrive and realize, oh no, this is not what I was expecting, they're not sticking around for long.
Yes.
Unless leaders are really actively working on the culture issue, they're going to get out of Dodge.
Yes. And let's unpack the implicit, which is, why would someone want to leave if there's a toxic situation? Maybe it's kind of obvious, self-evident, but maybe not. It leads to a lack of joy in the work, a lack of hopefulness, a lack of, morale is kind of what is morale, right? It's sort of what's the word? A bit mysterious, but I think it's the collective attitude, hopefulness, enthusiasm, openness to trying things, a kind of dynamism, and the toxicity is the opposite of that. And so it leads people to be kind of closed up in their shell, self-protective, down, and that's just naturally not fun.
It will likely also hinder results and productivity.
For sure.
And your best employees want to feel productive. It feels good to feel productive and to achieve.
Yes.
And if the mechanism to produce good results has holes in it through these toxic dynamics and behavioral problems and things unaddressed, or systems that don't work, but we don't talk about it, the lack of productivity will be very discouraging, and a good employee will want to go achieve high results somewhere else.
Yes. Great. So that's one thing, is the lack of holding people accountable, the toleration of a toxic situation in a culture. Another one is isolation for highly relational people. And let's talk about that. You mentioned someone who was in a job where they had not had a meeting for 6 months, and they're someone who really likes to be around people. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. I think this is personality traits. So it's good to know your employees and put them well into roles that they're going to thrive in. But this person is very relational, very social, thought they were heading into a job that would involve a lot of human contact, but ended up actually in kind of the back office, closed up, and said I could go to work for multiple days without speaking to any other person.
Wow. This is a sales job, is that right? A
Yes,
prospecting sales job?
yes. And
And that's both.
unless they went out of the office to speak to a prospect, which certainly is part of the role, but no team experience that you
Wow.
could sneak in and sneak out of an office for days. And actually sneaking implies that you're being, clever and trying to avoid people, but there's no team contact and extreme sense of isolation, not knowing what anyone else is doing. So you don't feel part of a movement, of a
Yes.
system. It
Yes.
is, here's your little bit of scope
Yes.
and go out there and good luck.
Is it deliberate or is it by default that's the situation? And I'm curious, was this person promised other? Do you know?
I don't think there was any misconceptions. There was probably a lack of clarity and some assumptions there
Okay.
upon hiring, saying,
Yes.
well, this, most teams, they meet, they gather, they might have some
Right.
meetings,
Right.
you're in an office with other people, you're in an organization. And the assumption there is that we would gather and talk, perhaps, but the experience has not been that. Yeah.
Wow. Let's also now talk about a lack of clarity. You mentioned a situation where someone was expected to be in at their desk for certain amounts of time, and also a lack of related clarity around goals and outcomes. So I think it was both a lack of measurement
Mhm.
and also measuring things that don't make sense, like time at a desk when all that really matters is results in sales.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think that was one of our points here was the measuring the wrong thing. And if there's a lot of jobs that it is very important you're there 8 to 5. You've got customers showing up, or you have to keep the doors open, or something that makes perfect sense. There are many other roles where that rigid measurement is actually could be very destructive or at least ineffective. And instead of having very clear measurements of these are your goals, these are your targets for the role, go achieve them, go after it. And if by whatever mechanism, and again, employers can set some parameters around it, but not being clear about the measurements or your freedom to go achieve it. And one example is, again, it was a sales role where a person had been producing some reasonable results, but they didn't actually, they didn't know. They didn't know if these were good results or poor results. And one person made a offhanded comment saying, "Wow, like that was a good week for you." And that was the first time this person had a sense of, "Oh, my target must be under that." If we can conclude that these numbers are of high achievement. And they had not gained any clarity around, how do I know I'm winning?
Including after that little piece of informal feedback?
Yeah, the conclusion was, "Oh, okay, that's good to know. That was it."
Yes.
That
Wow.
still to this day is the only
Yes.
I a reasonable small expression of a measurement.
Yes. And has he sought out that clarity and it's not offered, or is it just not even worth it just seems wild to me that would be a situation. So what happens, because this is related to our why do good people leave? Someone
Yeah.
would leave because they're not getting clarity. And I would think if you ask for it and it's denied for you, that's just a form of the same thing, but even worse.
Yes. Yeah, and in this instance, it was asked for, and the answer was, you're doing good. You're on the right track.
Man. So if you are in that experience ever, employee or even volunteer, I wouldn't, if I were you, I wouldn't tolerate that. I wouldn't obviously respectfully say, could you be a little, you want to be respectful.
I need more.
Could we
Like,
specify what that looks like?
Mhm.
And you might, this is kind of the managing up concept. You might need to suggest some things just to get the wheels on. Is it 3 sales a week or 2 things produced if you're a producer of something? Is it 5 media hits if you're a communications person? And if a person dodges and refuses, I just wouldn't stand for that. I would be looking for another job. That's not fun. So good people leave if you're not measuring the right stuff or you don't give the measurement at all. And don't just expect people to sit in their desk if time sit at the desk isn't directly the point of what you want from them.
Mhm.
I think those are some of the key things, Stephanie. We talked also about compensation. I said we talked about that briefly. We've noted that as long as people are paid adequately, reasonably, and it's in a reasonable economic market, there's some places where that's really tricky because of cost of living and they maybe can't live there based on what's realistic to pay them. But in most places, I think as long as there's adequate, just, reasonable payment that they can support their life and family on, then that's not the key driver. But if you're grossly underpaid, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because it tells the person you don't, well, it's not just not practical for them and may tell them that you don't value them too, depending on how it's laid out.
I
Any
think
comments on that?
Yes, absolutely. 2, I want to comment on the compensation and on the word value. Compensation, most employers think that's their, that's the mechanism to keep staff. And I hope that this episode is clarifying. No, there's many other actually much more influential reasons for an employee to leave. So like you said, it's pay well, pay as well as you can. But to the value part is, one, the compensation should reflect the value, but also seeing the value of their contribution. If you are seeing in an employee opportunity in them, potential in them, then a good employee wants to know that you see that in them.
Yes.
And maybe right now we don't have that opening or that opportunity for you, but I want you here because this is what I see of your value and what you bring. So I want to take you to the next level or the position and being invested in and seen, recognized for I do bring value. And that experience, that kind of feedback, employees can tolerate maybe not the great best fit in my position. Maybe it's not, the pay level I want right now, but I know my employer sees value in what I bring and in who I am and how I work, and they want to develop that. Employees stick around for that.
Stephanie, I really value you and believe in you and want to develop you. And you have to sit in that chair from 8 to 5.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait.
Really, really good point. People, it's a very simple human thing. Knowing that you're appreciated obviously has to be based on sincerity. It's not just a, hey, good job, sort of impersonal little sayings like that, but true feedback is so powerful. I know one of Lencioni's books, he talks about when managers don't tell people that they appreciate them with some reasonable regularity, it's like throwing money in the fire, because that is equivalent to so much value in the person's mind and desire to give their best and grow in and for and with the company and for their own good too. So to sum up, people leave, sometimes good people leave, and that's very expensive. Let's remember that. It's not just, it's unfortunate. I was talking with a client who's had some turnover, and the slowdown of the team's ability to produce, when you have managers under supported because people are leaving who are supporting them, they have to be less free. They're less free to do the higher level work. The cost of finding good candidates and training them, it just affects everything. And then the morale too, right? You losing your best people, other people will follow them. Yes. So the cost is huge. There's some simple things you can do.
And just one last comment, actually. I know I've talked to employers whose bad apple on the team, when we talked about the cultural, behavioral problems, has a long tenure. So a severance would be expensive.
Mm.
And to that person who's still listening to this podcast, I would challenge you to actually run the numbers on that and think about
Yes.
what happens here. If a severance costs me $60,000, I don't know, whatever your
Right.
range is and how long they've been there. If my good people start leaving and I now need to run, job ads and training and slow down on productivity, that costs. And it's a lot easier to look at the severance line because that number is nice and tidy, and the operational costs lost by turnover is more elusive, but it's real.
Yes. Yes. And we've experienced when a bad apple is removed, the remaining collective productivity tends to go up because their attitude tends to suppress the capacity of the group of people's ability to perform. And so that's hard to measure and hard to promise what it will look like, but we're pretty confident that you will find it. So keep that in mind too as you run those numbers. So keep your best people, give them clarity, measure the right things, measure things, make sure that they're not promised a collaborative environment when really it's going to be isolation. There are some people in the world that want isolation, but that tends to be pretty rare and unique and needs to be clear. And we hope that therefore you'll be able to keep your best people for a long time. So thanks for listening.